All right. Kara, we finally made it to this podcast episode.
Dr. D, I'm very, very happy to finally be talking to you.
I know it's great times. I mean, you're in New York City, right? In that area?
Yes. Yeah, I'm in New York.
Okay. Are you lifelong New Yorker or what?
Oh, good question. So I grew up in upstate New York in a small town. And then as soon as I turned 18, I broke out and moved to the city, which was really only an hour and a half from where I was from.
Mhm.
But I've been here ever since.
Wow. How do you like it?
Love it.
Man, some people
Love
are
it.
built for that, and some people aren't. It's interesting. New York City saw a huge amount of people. Well, I don't know how huge it was, honestly, but some people moved out, right, during the last couple of years was what happened. And, do you see like people coming back into the city?
It's so funny because, I couldn't wait to get out of my town and move to Manhattan. And then when the pandemic hit, you couldn't get anything, a bed and breakfast, like not an Airbnb, everything was, everyone wanted to
Yeah.
go back to where I'm from. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, oh, yeah. I mean, I did go up there for a little bit, but yeah, I think people are coming back. The city's coming back, Broadway's back, shows are
That's
back,
great.
live performance. So yeah, we're coming back.
All right, so let's jump into this because I like your story is very interesting to me. So you have this new book, a memoir, right, about
Yes.
kind of a dream and a day job. So where did this come from? Let's get kind of the genesis of this.
Okay, so my memoir is called Putting My Heels Down, a memoir of having a dream and a day job. And I started writing it about 12 years ago. And it actually started, I was teaching Pilates and I was a professional dancer and choreographer. And I taught Pilates, but I really didn't want to be teaching Pilates. I really wanted to be performing. I had a vision of myself touring and performing on big stages. And
Yeah,
I sort of got wrapped up. And I know well, like the gym scene, the
yeah.
personal training scene. And so in between clients, I would be writing in my appointment book, just little thoughts jotting down, mostly ranting about my clients. And, I had a lot of Upper East Side, what you would imagine, like a
Yeah,
nanny
yeah,
diaries. That's what I thought I was doing, like a
yeah,
Pilates diaries.
yeah.
Um, and then when I had a bunch of material written, some writing friends of mine had hooked me up with some coaches, writing coaches and teachers that said, why aren't you writing about your dancing life? Like, why are you only writing about, ranting about teaching Pilates? And that really took me on what ended up being a more than decade long journey of writing about my experience as a dancer with big dreams and unfortunately the wrong body to try and make it in New York.
Okay, talk about that, the wrong body. What does that mean?
So I, from a very young age, was told that I would never make it as a dancer. I did not have the right body. Now, what I did have always was I was always very skinny naturally. So when you look at me, I look like a sort of picturesque dancer, or I did. Um, but I had very, 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 and I still have very, very tight body, tight Achilles tendons. One of my teachers recommended I have my Achilles tendon replaced with a monkey tendon instead. So I would have more plie, more bend.
My God.
Uh, I was told my hips really started hurting me when I was in college. I ended up having 2 hip surgeries. I'm due for another hip surgery. I always had a lot of pain and tightness in my body.
Yeah.
So it never felt good to dance, to move.
Hmm. Interesting. Does that the monkey tendon thing was that a real thing? Somebody said, I mean, they really meant
Yeah.
that?
Oh, I mean, read the book. You'll see the other things they said to me. There was some real zingers that my dance teachers told me.
What kind of
Um,
world is that though? Like in a sense, it seems like a very I mean, clearly it's not been my world and I've seen some movies. That doesn't make me know anything about it. But what's that environment like? It seems like it could be a high stress, very competitive environment.
yeah, well, in dance, criticism is considered a compliment.
Mm.
So I always say I consider myself a star because I was getting a lot of criticism. So it's like, oh, they must really, really believe in me.
Yeah.
So I think part of training, and especially, now I'm in my 40s, so my early training was in the 80s. And I think now the training has really changed. We can't say the types of things now that my teacher said to me, and certainly what was said to
Sure.
my teachers before me. But it is very high stress. And it's hurtful. It is hurtful.
Yeah, I would imagine so. What's the, you talked about kind of the body element of it. Did you feel like there was experiences of promoting poor like nutritional habits or practices to create the body that you needed?
Yeah, so I think in the dance world, of course, we are ridden with eating disorders and body dysmorphia. And I was very privileged not to have that part be an issue for me. I had other issues. But for sure, we all smoked cigarettes and didn't
Mhm.
eat, and did all those things. There were
Yeah.
smoking lounges in our, by our dance studios. And,
This is
it's
crazy
just
stuff.
something I know. So we were definitely, I have friends. I was in situations where there were weigh-ins and people
Hmm.
cut because of their weight. And, there is a lot of that for sure.
And that is less prevalent now, or what's the current state of things that you
I
know
think,
about?
I think we're more educated now. I think it's still a problem for sure. And for women, I don't think it's as much of a problem for men. And men are
Mhm.
usually the ones that are taking out these issues on women, to be
Yeah.
frank. But we are much more educated now. So I think it is better now. And hopefully it will continue to get better.
How does that relate to the product of dance at this point? Like, is it that people are changing it and they're like, oh, the product's still good, or how we're seeing it? What do you think about that?
As far as the product being
Like
the
the
body of a
performance,
dancer,
you
the
know?
performance,
Yeah.
I think the more that we can look at dancers and maybe even performers in general as whole people and
Hmm.
not just instruments, not just bodies, it's only going to benefit their performance. You look at one of the most famous ballerinas right now is Misty Copeland. And, Misty would not be Misty without her story and her background and her experience that we all know, and we're rooting for her. And she's a whole person to us,
Yeah.
not just a body.
Right. Was there maybe different body types that are more prevalent in dance now that you're seeing?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I grew up wanting to be a ballerina, but like I said, they told me I would not make it as a ballerina, so they encouraged me to explore modern dance, and I did become a modern dancer who did continue to take ballet class, but I performed and choreographed modern dance. And the body type for modern dance is certainly more open and has more of a range. Ballet, come see, come saw, I would say. I think we're seeing more diversity, but we could see a lot more.
Yeah. I mean, where do you think dance is headed in general? I mean, it seems like there's been some change, but where would you like to see it go?
I would like dance to be part of our everyday vernacular and experience. Dance is like the lowest art on the totem pole. And
Yeah.
I don't know why, well, there are a few reasons I do know why that could be. But we all dance, we all
Yeah.
inherently dance and we move. And because of whatever, whether it's religion or whether it's self-consciousness or whatever it is. So I would like to see everybody dancing. That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah. I love dancing. It's awesome.
Yeah.
You think it
Yeah.
like it just kind of came to me. I think like being in health and wellness, dance, kind of artistic things are often pushed down below what society deems as important things. And I wonder if part of that is because we're like, well, I can run, I could dance. These are things I just do recreationally. So maybe I don't know, is there like a thing to that like, well, you do it anyways. Why we give this a big emphasis to it, you know?
Yeah, I think maybe that could be true for sure. Yeah. I think it's interesting, in the schools, and I've done a lot of teaching in public schools in New York City, and I
Hmm.
used to work for an organization that sort of would get called in as like a last resort. We're going to The school is, going to close down or
Okay.
whatever's happening. They're not doing well. Oh, let's call the arts in now.
Let's call the arts
And
in.
if
Yeah.
the arts were there to begin with, I would argue maybe the level of uh, how the school was performing would be higher.
I think we're failing a lot of artistic people coming up in high school and stuff, and like we're just failing them because we're making them do math all the time, and we're making them be so super into like tech based things. When so I always say this, artists are some of the best parts of living. The creation of something that is artistic is so important to the human story. But it's for some reason we're like, you need to be in tech, you need to know math, you need like it's crazy to me, you know.
Yeah, it's like STEM, STEM, STEM.
STEM,
And
yeah.
I keep saying it's STEAM. Some places call it STEAM. They do add
Yeah,
the A in for the arts, like it's
yeah,
STEAM.
yeah. Like,
We
why
we
don't we
I
please?
I think that we don't, well, first of all, we have a system that's set up that if you do become an artist, your life is hard, you're not going to make money, your life is difficult. And our government doesn't provide for artists in the way that in Europe, the government does.
Right.
So right away, there's a level of success that we know we're not going to meet most likely as artists. So that's not going to be promoted in an educational setting, where it's about capitalism and, succeeding.
Sure. Yeah, most definitely. So when you're writing this book, take me through the journey of writing the book. Like, what was the process like for you?
So the process, I do come from a very hardcore dance training. So I took that same dance training and put it to my writing. I got up at 5 a.m. I would write, go teach my Pilates clients, go to ballet class, rehearsal, blah, blah, blah. And in between be writing. But I did wake up every morning and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I revised and I revised. And when I finally realized I had enough to make a book, I started querying agents. And I did have friends that were writers that were giving me some direction. And so again, I took my dance training mentality to querying, and I queried over 150 agents, and I got little bites here and there. And then I finally got a big bite. And the big bite happened a week after I gave birth to my daughter, my first child. And so then all of a sudden things started happening quickly. And I got an agent, and this is now 10 years ago. I got an agent, and the book wasn't selling to publishers at that point because I didn't have a platform. Yeah. And they wanted you to have a platform. So I know. So I kept the book in my computer, but I kept like entering contests, which I would win. I won finalists in a couple of contests. Like I kind of just kept it going. I had another child, I just kind of kept it. And then I finally met up with the publisher that I have now directly, who fell in love with my project. I fell in love with the small press, Motina Books. And that's the short, long story of the journey of the book.
It's so funny.
The publication of it.
Yeah, right. It's like, I didn't have a platform. Like, isn't that the story of like society? It's like, you have to have this or that. It's like, we're marginalizing people based off, it's like, well, if you don't give me this X return, it's really not worth my time. It's like, sometimes I just have a problem with that. I don't know. It's like, I get it. I totally get it, but it's like, there's got to be space for other stuff too. It can't be a one-way street,
It's worse and worse. It's all about how many followers you have and how many this and that. And it's, and when my book wasn't selling to publishers, my agent had the idea for me to start Lazy Girl Pilates to build my platform. And Lazy Girl Pilates was kind of the work that I was already doing, bringing Pilates into like everyday life and keeping it funny and light, like doing it in bed, on the toilet, in the shower, like, all these things.
Pilates on the toilet, y'all.
I do. I have it. Lazy Girl Pilates morning, available on Amazon. You can get your toilet workouts. So, but that was the idea, like, oh, we could take this thing and build a platform. And then of course, life happened. My life dramatically took a change of course, which, my husband was diagnosed with cancer. So then all of a sudden everything was, on the back burner.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so difficult. I mean, I know we've been conversing for everybody listening and then who will listen. It's like, knowing Kara for a little bit, I've been privy to some of the stuff that's been happening to her, and certainly wish your husband well and that things go well in this. It's always a difficult thing, but you've been so amazing through it. You're very good at being present and getting back to people, which is a big pet peeve of mine. I don't like when people don't.
Oh, me too.
I really don't like it.
No.
There's no excuse for it either. I really don't think there's an excuse for it.
I agree. That is my pet peeve also. Be on time and get back to people. And, even if you get back to people and say, I got this, I'll get to it. Just know that I looked at it,
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. And let's jump into the Pilates world. I'm curious. I've hired a lot of Pilates people in my life when I was running clubs and stuff. And it's a curious bunch of people, I'll put it though. Instructors and participants. Okay.
Totally.
Saying in a very interesting way, curious.
Yes,
what's
curious.
Been your experience
That's a nice
with
word.
It? Yeah, it's a curious group of. So what's been your experience? Let's go high level. What's kind of the culture of
Oh,
Pilates in your
am I
mind?
going highbrow? So I'll go highbrow and then I'll bring it
Yeah, let's
to
do that.
lowbrow where
Yeah,
I usually
yeah.
hang out. So in an elevated way, Pilates attracts a very type A woman.
Right.
Pilates is highly structured. It's a series of a certain amount of exercises. Um, so you tend to get the type A who want to come in to get a flat stomach and get a strong core, and they saw celebrities. That's right. Am I right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
it's so
okay.
right.
And you're generally getting like probably pretty in shape, like people that are attracted to Pilates already. I think
Hmm.
people that are not into exercising probably think Pilates is like way out of their, comfort zone. So that I would say is the
Uh,
high end of
yeah,
Pilates people.
yeah.
And in my book, actually, my first chapter, I describe the client that I call the HB, and that's the heavy breather.
Heavy
And
breather.
so I'm sure like in Pilates, the first exercise that you do is called the 100, and you pump your
Yes.
arms up and down and you
Hmm.
inhale for 5 and exhale for 5. So there are people, so you're supposed to breathe like full breaths for 5 in, 5 out. There are certain people, and this is the type A people that heard this, they thought they heard this from an instructor, that do a breath where we go, and they're breathing like this. And,
Yes.
they're coming in with designer mats and designer outfits, and they're ruling you
Mhm.
around. They're telling me to bring them a mat, move this over, get
Bring
me
this to
this, do
me.
this. That's the HB. So
Yeah.
I had a lot of experience with HBs in New York. And unfortunately they would pay well. I would end up being their private instructor. So I had to
Sure,
kind of suck up
sure.
to them a little bit. But
Yeah.
that's the typical.
I mean, I would say like that's very similar for what I've experienced in hiring Pilates instructors and being part of those classes. On a high level, for sure. It's a different world. It's funny how we have these different environments, these almost silo environments for health and wellness.
Yeah, that's I would say a majority of Pilates instructors are former dancers. So
Yes.
you do get, and dancers are, we're pretty strict, and
Yeah.
we're serious about what we're doing. And I think
Right.
Pilates instructors take themselves very, very seriously. And I think that I was able to really succeed in my own Pilates instructor journey because I never took it seriously. I failed my first exam. I had a margarita hangover. I didn't give a shit about Pilates.
Oh, I love that.
I just needed to make money, and I needed to
Yeah.
make money to support my dancing. And so Pilates was the way to go at that point. This is in 2000, right at the sort of peak of when Pilates started to get like,
Yes.
exciting for people.
Yeah. It's kind of like
Um,
Pilates and yoga kind of started making this comeback all at the same time. It's like, because I had run clubs for like well over a decade. I was like, oh, this is dead. And then it was like, we're back.
oh yeah,
Pilates and yoga, like, boom.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And then, then there's all the spin-offs. And then you
Yeah.
have, all these spin-offs of these things. But yeah, so did you enjoy working with the Pilates instructors? Do I ask?
How does my face look when you say
You know what? So it's funny because I hope you don't get mad at me for saying this, but I say in my book, I call like you were running, like you were in
Yeah,
charge of all these
that's
different.
right.
So I would call you the PIMP. You're my Pilates pimp, and you would pimp me out to different places, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I had a lot of different, and I have like Pilates pimps that were from a gym and from yoga studios,
Yeah.
and the personalities of those, you understand this world,
Of course.
this
Of course.
culture and what people are like.
It's a big, for me, like I actually had a lot of positive experiences with Pilates instructors. Some of them are pretty like over the top. But overall it was good, but I knew it was like something that we needed it, especially I was running like country club environments, private
Mhm,
residential things, and very wealthy people. And the Pilates reformer, very
mhm,
popular, the
mhm.
Cadillac reformer, we had all that stuff. And it was always full. We had private lessons constantly going on. We made a lot of money in private Pilates lessons. So it was good, but it was interesting. It was great when I would have a personal trainer who was also a Pilates instructor. And I pushed that because I wanted my staff to make money and support themselves. So a lot of them, they really weren't into Pilates, but they knew that our clientele was. So they were not dancers. They were definitely not dancers. They're like, I don't really care about that. I got to find something else that's also going to supplement what I'm doing, you know?
Yeah, and it's a strong relationship that you form with
Strong.
Pilates. You know, in classical Pilates, which I was trained in, you're not allowed to do the exercises yourself
Right.
because
Right.
everything has to be about the client. So the client is like, oh, she really sees, you know, they really feel seen and you know, and
I've heard that
you
a
know,
lot.
and yeah, and you're supposed to like do things for them to make them
Yeah.
feel, you know, give them the, you know, there's this dynamic that goes on, and so you can develop a very strong following and make a lot of money,
Yeah.
and also in the best ways. And I know I'm saying not so great things about Pilates, but in the best ways, like I've been able to meet amazing people as my Pilates clients that I consider friends, and that we have a
Yeah.
close, genuine, you know, relationship.
What's the Pilates scene like in New York City as it currently stands? I mean, I haven't experienced it there, but I've experienced it in a lot of other places. You know.
Well, I think, you know, in 2000, when I was certified, that was right when Sean Gallagher had lost. So Pilates was trademarked. And in 2000, they lost the trademark. So then anyone could teach Pilates. And that was when the boom happened.
Yeah.
And that was when I happened to get certified. So I think, and yoga too is not trademarked. So anyone can teach yoga, you know. So I think because of that, you have all these bar and spin-off and this and that. So I think it's, you know, the scene is about now, you know, 20 years later, is a hybrid, always combined with something else, or we're pure.
Right. Yeah, there's just a lot of, man, we had bar, we had everything. And it was like getting comical though, because it's like, how many different versions of yoga can we have? And then we'd have people like, let's do like the laughing yoga and stuff. I'm like, I got to draw a line here, man.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm like, I mean, you know, I don't know. It's getting weird.
Yeah,
You know,
well,
it's already kind of weird. I'm like,
that's the gym that I mostly worked for was about entertainment fitness. And so we were there as instructors to entertain. So their classes, I would come to work one day and be like, okay, your class is now hot Pilates. We have to heat your room. Like, what?
Yeah.
Why are we heating my room? Like, that's not Pilates. And plus it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or they'd add a prop that didn't necessarily belong, or like, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah. The whole hot Pilates, hot yoga phase was super heavy in Las Vegas when I was there for a certain period. I'm not sure how it is now, actually, but it was like becoming a little much. Honestly thought. You know what it is when something starts out as one thing and then it develops almost a cult-like feeling. That's when I started to get really worried about stuff, you know?
And that's what's so much coming out now. I mean, you go on Netflix or anything, all you see are series about, you know, these yoga, the cult, exactly what you're saying, these cults and these, you know, yoga gurus, you know, that were squandering money and having affairs, you know, all this stuff.
You must have seen the same one I saw about that one dude who was the yoga guy. What's the hot yoga, the guy,
the Bikram guy. Yeah, I know. I haven't seen it, and I can't. Yeah. Oh yeah, he's driving around in his fancy cars, and
like that whole documentary. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's such a pervert. I was like, you know, I kind of this whole kind of, you see that in Pilates, yoga, and different things, even to an extent like super high intense exercise gurus or mind body gurus. You know, I think you have to be very careful about getting to something where there's like a charismatic leader of a movement.
Exactly.
You know,
anything. Well, that's what I think like people don't realize about Joe Pilates is that Joe Pilates was like a really cool dude. He smoked cigars. He drank whiskey. I didn't realize it. Sorry, I'm just going to close this really quick because I look like I'm incarcerated. I'm not incarcerated.
Okay, it's not happening.
So anyway, so Joe Pilates was like, he was about exercise being a part of your daily life. Like the reformer, the Cadillac, he wanted to be household furniture, you know? So I don't know what he would think of where Pilates is now. But he was cool. He wasn't like, you know, he was strict in his teaching. But he was a real person.
Yeah. And I think that's what I'm really tied into that, because when I was running clubs and now owning my own businesses and fitness, I'm very careful about the people that I kind of connect with. I'm like, is this person like overzealous about this in a way that seems hysterical? There's this charismatic leader, cultish feeling, because those things, they're not good for you. I mean, they're just not. It promotes a one-way street
And
for doing
especially in,
things.
yeah, and in wellness, and certainly in like a gym or studio setting, when we go in there as customers, as clients, and we're wearing tight clothing, but we're already coming in vulnerable,
Right.
and we listen to whatever's being told to us by our teachers or our instructors.
Yeah.
And we have to be aware of that. And to lighten it up, I always tell the story that, like, I once said during a Pilates mat class, I had like 40 people in the class, it was a huge class, and
Yeah.
I said rectal
Yeah.
abdominals
Yeah.
rather than rectus, and no
Right.
one said anything. I'm
Yeah.
like, I just said rectal abdominals. Like someone call me out on that. I'm not talking about your butt. Like what
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and no one called me out because anything that I said was just taken at its word.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's dangerous
I
and a little
want like
funny.
health and wellness. I've always been a big stickler for this. Like, I like being around people and colleagues who are just like really normal people. Like, they're not super, super into it, like crazy obsessed with exercise. And I understand, like, I was a collegiate athlete. I exercise hard, but it's like, it's not my life, man. It's like, and I think you got to be careful about crossing the line between like loving something and it becoming a weird obsession. And
Uh,
sometimes, like when I would run clubs, tennis is like this. I'm telling you, tennis is such a cult in country clubs. It's like crazy. The tennis pro is like the guru. It's like, and the teams and the outfits, it's like, it's so crazy. I didn't know this world until I got into it.
maybe I have to start teaching tennis. I don't
I'm
know.
telling you, if you're like a decent tennis instructor, you will have those clients for life,
Wow.
because you can do round robins, you can do individual lessons, team lessons, pickup game. Like, there's so much stuff you can do, and people will pay it. Then you get them on a USTA tennis league team. Everybody gets outfits, uniforms. It becomes a whole seasonal thing too. It's like, it's a huge obsession in country clubs, massive money generation, but it has always that same feel, this obsession with it. People become fanatical about
Mhm,
it. And I saw that with Pilates and yoga a lot
mhm.
too, when I was running clubs.
Yeah, that was really my mission with Lazy Girl Pilates and with my clients in general, because I do still teach Pilates, is that clients should be able to do everything that we're doing together on their own.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, they're not going to have me there looking at every little detail,
sure.
but we should be teaching people how to bring exercise into their life, and not that it can only happen in this space, in this country
Yeah,
club, in this spa, this and that's when people stick with it.
yeah.
Otherwise, it becomes a phase. When I get clients, are like, I'm going to do 3 days a week privates. Yeah, I know you're not going to stick with it. No one's going to stick with 3 times a week privates at like $175 a session or
Right.
whatever I'm
No,
going to charge
no.
you.
Yeah,
No,
no.
you're going to, maybe I give you like 3 months tops.
I
And then we
love the
start filtering down.
I love the honesty. Like, when sometimes people approach me to be like, I want to exercise 5 times a week. I'm like, absolutely not. They're
No,
like, you don't want to do it. I'm like, you won't do it. I'm like,
right.
I don't want to do that. I'm like, we're setting yourself up for failure. Like, we got to be reasonable about this. But you always see it coming. It's like, it's great, you're excited, but let's be reasonable about what we're doing here.
Right. Because we want to have clients, we want to have, as the instructors and teachers want to have clients that stay with us for a long time. We don't want to
Exactly.
have, yeah, I call them in my book, I talk about the one night stands, like the clients that I would see once. And then I would, check in with them. How are you feeling? How'd you like the session? Are you ready to book
Uh,
another one? It's the one night stand. You never see them again. Um,
Hit it and quit it, baby.
exactly.
I've experienced those. I mean, if you're in health and wellness and you're working in essentially a commission-based business,
Hmm.
you have to work to make money. And when
Hmm.
it's hard to get people like that, because it's like, hey, do you realize, like, this is how I work, type of
Right.
thing.
Exactly.
You're trying to
And
shield them.
I'll tell you my favorite kind of client, and I don't know if you ever had this one. This might be like a very New York thing. I ended up calling her ATM because I would show up to her apartment for 7 a.m. sessions. Now I lived in the East Village on 14th Street. She
Mhm.
lived up in the 80s. And so I would have, get up early. It's,
Sure.
leave my house at like 6:25 to go and get to her on time. And the doorman would let me in. She wouldn't buzz her. I'd get up and then she'd just hand me cash instead of, she didn't want to work out.
Yeah,
She
I've
would just
had
hand
that
me cash.
before. Yeah.
ATM. So I called her
Yeah.
the ATM machine. I would just have to get up in the
Yeah.
morning and go up to the ATM machine.
Yeah. I've definitely had that to some level. I kind of have that still on a few things, but it's
On
like,
some
hey,
levels, it's not so bad. Christmas,
no,
Hanukkah's coming. Like, it's a
yeah,
way to get your
yeah.
cash, but yeah, not ideal.
Not ideal. No, it's a different world to be in, and living in that world where um you're working on a regular basis with people's body. But a
Mhm,
lot of what it is people's mind. And
mhm,
I'm sure you experience the clients, they tell you a lot of stuff. They
mhm.
tell you like a lot of stuff you may not want to hear. So,
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And that, in my memoir, in my teaching life, I was going through so much in my own body. I was going through 2 hip surgeries, and I was in pain all the time, running around to these clients that I have to pretend that I'm their peppy 6-pack perfect Pilates instructor.
yeah, yeah,
Meanwhile, I'm dying, and I'm
yeah.
smoking cigarettes when I leave. Like, I'm not what they think that I am.
Yeah.
Uh, not anymore. But
Yeah.
so it was really hard to listen to people complain about their bodies and complain about their lives when I was going through my own thing, and it didn't matter to them. And
Yeah.
it became, and it made turned me into a not very nice,
Mm.
to say it kindly, person.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever been in a situation where like you were out and clients saw you participating in something that they thought you wouldn't be doing?
Oh my God,
Like
yeah.
you're like, oh no, yes.
I mean, okay, so I talk about this in my book. I would go out to clubs like in my 20s and be
Hmm.
like drinking and smoking and
Yeah.
doing things, and they would say, like, that's my Pilates instructor.
Yeah.
And then, I actually met my husband in a Pilates class. And
Wow.
yeah, the like 2 that he ever took. And so, he asked me out and took me out, and he did not expect. So I was in my early 20s at that time, and he had no idea that I was coming out. Like, I was drinking like twice the amount that he was, and so he
Yeah.
was like in awe and couldn't believe it. But I was like, I had to put it out there right away that I was
Yeah.
not this guru, like we're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten caught by
Oh
clients?
yeah. And I never care. I never
Yeah,
care. Even now, I really don't care. I'm
I
like,
think
this
they
is
like
me.
it.
They love it. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
I was at some big party in this mansion thing, and they had a huge like chocolate fountain. I was tearing that thing apart, man. And all these people, I can't believe you're doing that. Like, you're a fitness professional. I'm like, what does that have to do with this? I'm like, I'm not like I'm at a chocolate fountain all the time. Like, I never do this. I'm definitely gonna do it here. Like,
Yeah,
I think
and
people
it's
like flawed people. Like, if you present yourself as this holier than thou, like you do everything perfect, you're eating all this stuff. I just think it's a fraud. It's fraudulent to me. Health and wellness people who present that all the time, I don't believe it. I honestly, and even if they do, I don't think they're having any fun.
no,
Honestly,
no, they're
they're
definitely
having
not having any
zero
fun.
fun, and I don't. I want to have fun. You know.
Yeah, me too. When I got certified in Pilates, um, I will use your word curious. It was a curious group of
Mhm.
people getting
Okay.
certified, and I, they were off to the Whole Food buffet, and I was, getting pizza and drinking Coke,
Love it.
and
I love it.
and 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 I was sort of mortified by it. But then I realized, like, that's what makes me different.
Yes.
Like, that's what makes me different.
Yeah.
And that eventually made me the instructor that people would want to take classes with,
Yep.
because there was that. I wasn't feeding them this, like, they didn't want to be, who wants to have a Whole Food? I mean, okay, once in a while you can have a Whole Foods buffet, like, fantastic, but
Yeah. You don't do that all the time.
no, it's and I think as dancers too, there's always this perception for me as a dancer, because I'm always really small, that I
Yeah.
ate really well, and I became a vegetarian at a really young age, and everyone thought that I ate so well. And you can find candy wrappers in my backpack, stuff. It was not what people thought.
Yeah. I mean, I just think you should present the reality of the situation. It's like everybody, that's why that's kind of where my struggle is with like the internet. And like we were saying, I'm pretty transparent on it. It's just like before they were like, oh, Dr. D, I want to tag you on Instagram. I was like, I got off. I was like, me personally, I couldn't handle it. It just seems so synthetic. It's like, for me, I know a lot of people get a lot of joy and a lot of good stuff out of Instagram or other things. For me, I've always been fighting it. Like every time I get on one of these things, I immediately want to get off, like immediately. And I'm like, I need to follow this feeling because I don't identify with any of these fitness professionals on here. This constant posting, this happy life all the time, living at the gym. I'm like, why? Like, I don't understand that. It doesn't even make sense physiologically. I mean, it's like,
no. And there's a shelf life to it, right?
There's a shelf life.
How long is this going to last like this?
Yeah.
And I think going back to, earlier in our conversation, talking about having followers and having this platform, there these fitness professionals that have humongous platforms.
Sure. Yeah.
And, so what?
I know it doesn't really mean anything. Like I have no platform on any of these things, like 0 people following me, nothing, but I have a 21-year, very highly successful fitness and wellness career without any of that stuff. You can do it without that. Just so you know. Like,
and by the way, you're actually busy with that.
I am. How can you do this?
Well, that's the thing. How are you spending all this time showing us your planks and your this and your shakes and whatever you're doing? When are you actually doing it?
I'm working. Like, how can you do
this?
Like,
you have work to do.
7, 8 sessions in a row. I'm working. Like, how does this? I don't get it. Like, and maybe they're working in a different way, and obviously, maybe they're making money, sponsorships, and all that stuff. I don't know. Like you said, I think it's a shelf life for me. I've got 21 years in. I've built a really good life. I want to be authentic. Like maybe some people that is, but often it's not authentic. It's very fabricated. It's not the real person. It's like it's like if I see a Pilates person or a yoga person doing like a handstand in like front of the Eiffel Tower or something, I'm like, this seems so fake to me. You know what I mean? It's like, why? So people can say, guess where I was?
Like, guess what I did when I was there?
I did a handstand. Why are you doing a handstand? Why are you doing a handstand in front of the Louvre? I just think you're a loser. Like, why are you doing that? Like, you just want attention. You're seeking attention. If I go to a place like that, I don't want anybody to know me. I just want to go in and enjoy. You
want to experience.
I just want to experience. I don't care. Like, I don't know. It just feels fabricated to me. And instructors, and that was my thing with instructors. Like when I would hire Pilates instructors, I was looking for that. Is this person like trying to use this as a platform for something, like, or do you actually care about the residents we're working with here? Like, do you really practice this?
I'm so curious of what our dynamic, you and I, would have been back in the day.
Oh man, I'm telling you.
You would have even loved me or hated me. I don't know.
I just think I loved Pilates instructors who were like very flawed, like they're a little messy. And like, I like everybody that I've ever employed when I was doing, like, I wanted them to have like something was kind of messy about them. And like, oh man, that's not that great. But it wasn't like too bad, but it was like,
you don't want too messy.
You don't want too messy because that's just a train wreck. But it was kind of like they were part of the Pilates community, but they didn't take it super serious.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, like we could hang out actually.
We can do this.
Yeah, we could hang out. Like, I didn't want to like hire somebody who's like, all they breathed was Pilates. I was like, like,
you have to breathe a little more.
Yeah. And then I just, and some of my favorite people I still are in touch with that I hired many years ago. And I just feel like they're just like, yeah, I went out and stayed out all night at a club, like recently. I'm like, I love you.
Jealous.
I know, like, just don't ever stop having fun, man. Like, and don't think that you're like, take yourself so seriously. Like you're the best Pilates. And it's great you have confidence, but like, honestly, I mean, you are teaching Pilates. I mean, you are training somebody. It's not like you're doing a good thing, but I mean, you're not blasting people into space and colonizing a planet. I mean, it's like, I mean, you're not splitting the atom here. You're creating a great social environment with some movement and exercise, and that's so important. But like, let's not get too serious about it here. Like,
yeah, I was just thinking, like, it's one of those things, like, I teach Pilates, but what I really teach is, blah, blah, blah. And you have to have the blah, blah, blah. Like I teach
Yeah.
Pilates, but what I really teach people is to be comfortable in their bodies, have a good
Yeah.
time while they're moving their bodies. Like that's what
Yeah.
it is. And Pilates can be the vehicle for that. Modern dance can be the vehicle for that. I
Yeah.
teach little kids. It could be the vehicle, so it's like,
Yeah.
what are you really doing?
What do you think about those dance shows that are on TV and stuff?
I don't watch them.
I don't watch them.
I don't, I don't like the idea of dance. Okay. I think the positive is I think it's great anytime that people are experiencing dance. So it's getting people excited to watch dance, and that's fantastic. Dance as a competition, I don't love. And that changed in the 90s when like these dance competitions started to get big. I went to a small dance school that was very classical and took itself very seriously and would never do a dance competition ever.
Yeah.
But then these competitions became a way to generate income for these studios, and the studios needed it. And so there is an important financial aspect to it. But I don't love the idea, and I don't enjoy watching people compete by dancing.
What is it about it that you don't enjoy?
I think that there's a craft and people's voices, I just don't see them coming through in the 20-second thing that we get to see of them. But at the same, like, So You Think You Can Dance, I don't even know if that's on anymore. Like a lot of people were able to really jump to the next part of their career doing these shows, which is good. I don't like watching 20 seconds of like bing, bam, boom, because there's a lot that goes on in between big, bam, boom. And as a choreographer, I'm more interested in how did you get to bing and bang, and what's the in between.
Yeah. You like I think you like the process of it, like all this.
I like the process, and I like the nuance, and there's that doesn't exist in the, these like how high can your leg go and spin around and this stuff.
Do you feel like it's just not realistic for how dance is actually taught and how it is, like the behind?
I think a lot of dancers are taught to do that they're taught to do tricks. And it's absence of an artistry. So I think that people are taught that way. I think in the shows where like things are condensed and they have to learn like a Dance with the Stars, they have to like learn a short dance, there's a time limit to their education on what they're doing. So I don't think that that's the, there's a mastery as far as the Dancing with the Stars thing that like they can't get to because they're learning in such a short period of time.
Sure. That's interesting. It makes me think about like, I don't know if you ever watched The Biggest Loser back in the day.
When it started. Yeah, I
did too. And I watched the first like season or two, and then I was like, this is wrong. I remember thinking it like, this is so wrong. This is a black eye on fitness. It really is. It just goes against everything that actually happens in good training sessions for that. And so I stopped watching because I was like, it just bothered me so much. This massive weight loss, and behind the scenes, everybody was like gaining the weight back when they were done and stuff. And who's going to work out 8 hours a day? I mean, that's what they're doing. Supervised dietary habits. Like, that's not the real life. The TV is always a vehicle for what's not real all the time. And I think that's what social media has become too, a vehicle for what's not real all the time. And I think it's kind of like the Matrix. You got to open your eyes. What's the reality of life, actually? This is not it. It's not it,
Well, and everything that you're describing, it's like we're all looking for a connection, right? Like in The Biggest Loser, we really connected to these people who's, we felt their struggle, and it was amazing to watch them, achieve these dreams. And the same way of any type of competitive show or really anything going on social media, we're looking for connection. And I think it's that word that I just want to say again, it's that nuance of the connection that we're missing.
It's a kind of like, even like dating shows and stuff. There's no nuance to it. It's like, okay, if somebody's filming you all the time dating somebody, it's not the actual reality of dating somebody when nobody's actually watching you. and
they're actors anyway.
It's like, okay, it's entertaining. I get the entertainment value, but it's kind of like, don't mistake that for real life connection with somebody. Like, there's no cameras generally when you're just meeting somebody, you know. I mean, that would be weird if people are just filming you all the time normally. I'm filming all my dates. like what?
There's probably someone doing that.
Yeah, and they're like trying to create a platform out of it.
Right,
I'm telling
exactly.
you,
There's their platform.
everybody's trying to create a platform out of something.
But then I wonder, and I'm someone that like, I have a book coming out in April. I'm trying to get the word out about my book, right? I'm trying to introduce myself and meet readers in a genuine way. How do I reach these readers? How do I do this without, I don't post pictures of myself in poses, places, or doing, things.
You mean you're not at the Statue of Liberty doing like a plank or something? I mean,
no, those days are over.
Those days are over.
If there ever were.
They're like, that's not happening.
No, but it's hard when you are trying to genuinely make connections with people and you are trying to build a following of sorts, or an audience, we can say.
Yeah.
How do you do that in a genuine way?
That's the dilemma with all creators and artists on social media. Everybody's a creator on social media. How do you do this and gain a following per se to get people to listen? But then it's kind of like, I've talked to so many people about this, like they're not in love with doing everything they're doing online. But I have to do it in order to it. And I'm like trying to challenge that. Like I'm like always trying to challenge that. There's other ways to get things done. Like my podcast, for example. I mean, it's actually been more successful when I'm not on other social media sites. And I think it's just because like it just feels more authentic when I've made it a smaller thing. For some reason, it's bigger when I've made it smaller. And when I try to make it bigger, it gets smaller. I know this is something, but I also talk about it a lot of like, hey, I got to be willing to accept the consequences of not being on these platforms. I just have to accept it. Whatever that means, I'm willing to have that be okay. But, right. But I understand that's hard,
At the end of the day, it's word of mouth, whether it's the word of mouth from Instagram, or it could be your mom in temple or church telling the whole, the whole congregation, hey, my daughter wrote a book, you should read it.
Some people's moms are great marketers, man. I'll tell you.
My mom is the number one. Mom, when you hear this, you're going to be, she's number one. She got me my first New York Times review when I was 21 years old.
Wow.
Shelly Tatelbaum, I'm giving you a shout out.
Big shout out to Shelly. It's like, and I always find like if you meet the right people, certain people are like jet fuel. Like they just like blast your stuff to everywhere, and I'm more invested into that almost process. It's like I was telling you, like I have this new social networking platform that I have, Fem, and like we don't advertise it at all on social media. It's all one by one, word of mouth. Now we're aware that means it's going to be very slow to grow. But there's something about that nuance, that process of doing something slowly and getting excited when somebody actually joins. It's like, that was because we really worked hard at that. Like we didn't blast it everywhere. We kept it very targeted to people we thought would be really into it, And there's something about that. I think the athlete in me, from being a collegiate athlete, most of what you do in life when you're an athlete is not seen. It's not seen. You're just grinding. I was a track athlete. You're going around that track every single day, round and round and round, and nobody cares except for you and the people there. There's no lights. There's no cameras. It's just, and that's the monotony that I think you have to kind of fall in love with a little bit,
Yeah, that's the grind. I mean, that's what when people, I can't believe you wrote a book. I can't believe you did this.
Yeah.
This is how I did it. It's that grind. You didn't see all the other stuff. You're just seeing it happening now, but you don't see what happened the last 10 years. You weren't there waking up in the morning with me, and you weren't there for all the rejections and all the issues, but the grind of it. And I think from, as a dancer, as an athlete, we definitely, we get that.
Yeah. It's a great lesson, and so just doing something like, look, you're on this podcast. Like if you go on a bunch of podcasts, you actually give the time, 45 minutes, an hour, 30, whatever, you do it over again. There's something beautiful about that. And obviously you could share that with other people, but like you get a double thing about it. You get to actually meet someone and spend time with them versus just blasting something out and go, oh, I hope a bunch of people look at this. I don't know.
Right.
That you don't even know, really, probably,
Right.
But like we start knowing each other. We start building something with each other. We've had conversations offline. We've had email conversations. You start building this wall of connection. And I think we sometimes lose that because we're just like, let's just get it out there. Let's just get it out there,
Sure. I mean, I think that's so true. And again, I think that goes back to the dance show thing, is this immediacy. The immediacy that like, oh, all of a sudden you can perform something that you learned 5 minutes ago. Like, okay, that took years, decades for the rest of us professionals to do, but okay, you can do that in 5 minutes. And the immediacy to get stuff out online, the immediacy to get whatever you have made.
Yeah.
And in dance, there is an immediacy that's different than other art forms, because it can only exist in time and space, right? And then it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, it's a flip. But I think we do get caught up in this needing to produce something quickly and then show it to the world.
That's an interesting way of putting that. Yeah. And this, we've been told like just have the camera on at all times, document your life. It's just something uncomfortable for me about that. Now, I have nothing to hide. It's just like, I need stuff for just me. Everybody doesn't need a window into my life all the time,
On the flip side, though, I have to say, like right before we started talking on the podcast, I'm making these series of reels for Instagram about things my dance teachers used to tell me. And I'm like cracking my shit up doing it. I'm like enjoying doing it. And it's funny to me to just like do something quickly like that without being so type A detailed about it. So there is a freedom in that, as well as a danger in that, freedom.
Yeah. I don't like all this stuff. I don't know how I'm into sustainable things. Like I'm into doing stuff I know I can sustain. Like I started a podcast. I knew I could sustain it because I know what it's like to create a schedule and do something and, book people and all that stuff. But for some people, a podcast is not sustainable because, too much work, the editing and stuff like that. Like I want people to really think about, is what you're doing sustainable? Can you really keep doing this? Will this be around like next year or no?
And are you okay with that? Are you okay with doing something that's not sustainable? That's I'm a coach, also a wellness and resilience coach. And that's something that like would be questioned to ask clients. Like, are you okay with, the fact that this may not be sustainable?
Right. And are you presenting yourself in this whole thing? Like you're putting all this footage out. If you're 22 years old and you're putting all this footage out, at 42, you're going to be a pretty different person. Are you proud of
so happy we didn't have this when we were younger?
My gosh.
I mean, really?
No. I would have done so many stupid things.
Terrible.
I'm telling you, so many stupid things. You're not that intelligent when you're like 22.
No, and with kids, I mean, I know you and I both have kids. Like, just their whole social media practice is just. I can't even fathom what that would have looked like and felt like.
I mean, I remember things like when I was like 25, I was like, I was not that intelligent. I was like, what was I doing? No one needs to hear
what I'm saying.
Like, well, this is not good. Like, what was I doing? Like, and I think like you're forming, you're developing, but you often say and do a lot of weird things in your 20s that in your 40s, you would not be happy that a lot of people knew about it, but like.
No, but you know what's so funny? I feel like millennials and people like they're not as into it.
Yeah.
Like I think it's interesting. Like we have a babysitter and she's like never on her phone. She doesn't do a lot of social media. I'm like, who brought you up? Like, that's so interesting.
Yeah. I actually have a lot of younger connections in their 20s and we're more similar than people my age. People my age in their 40s, they're obsessed with phones and
they're obsessed with like Facebook and
they're obsessed with it.
Obsessed.
It's so weird. But I also think it's kind of like, it's a time in life, like your life shrinks a lot. Like if you had all these friends and all your friends have these different lives now, they're raising kids and stuff, and they're in the thick of it. It's like, they don't have a lot of time for you. So you start seeking out all this other interaction, and it's like, it can be a very limiting time, a shrinking time in your social life. That's my guess. I have no clue. I'm just
I
guessing.
think it's a shrinking time in your social life, but also it's a way to tell people what, like, I always feel like, because my husband was in the hospital, as you know, last
Yeah,
week.
yeah,
And so I posted on Facebook, like, he's out of the hospital, but, just
yeah.
giving. And then I'm like, okay, but does everyone need to know this of my, and like, but is it easier, like, to be honest, like, it's, for
Yeah.
me, it's just easier. Like, let me just get it out there, because then I
Uh-huh.
don't have to tell a bunch of different
Yeah.
people. So in some ways it's a good vehicle of information, not having to, to contact
Yeah.
all of your friends, but all of your friends need to know all your business.
I think we've messed up what friendship actually means. I mean, I don't think I don't think most people have a good sense of that, with that stuff. It's like how we call things is really interesting. It's followers versus friendship. I'm like, I don't think people often think about the actual meaning of these things. It's like, I don't know. It's just weird to me. I'm a big operational definition person. I'm like, friends, that's a little much. I'm like, I don't know any of these people really that much. Like,
Yeah, you're an acquaintance.
like, but that does that look good online to say, hey, click to be my acquaintance? It's like we're now acquaintances. That's the more appropriate thing. And you know what they should do? I got a great idea.
Okay.
You need to go from like levels of connectivity online. So like this is entry level acquaintance. And then over time, you can earn a way to move up to friend, to make it a friend actual on here.
Ooh.
And then you move up and then you're like a BFF or something like that on there. Like, they at least have like relationship status and stuff. Why can't you have like a friendship level status?
Oh, yeah, I'll tell you why. I think that there's a slight flaw.
Okay.
Can you demote?
I think you should be able to demote.
Like, you know what? You were my BFF, but I don't really, yeah, you're not cutting it.
If we're being transparent, you should be able to go down.
Okay, great. I need to think about this. I don't know.
Right? How many people in your life were they at one point like this level and then they went down, or they, somebody went up? Like, why it's not a static thing,
It's true. It's not static.
So like maybe some people I was really good connections with, and maybe we have less of a connection. Why can't I like sub-level this connection? Like, oh, I don't want to drop them from my thing on LinkedIn, but can they be like a different version? Like,
now, you know what? You were trying not to spend time on social media. You just like quadrupled your time.
I just did. And I was like, it's like, but then people get upset. We're not connections and you made me an acquaintance. I'm like, isn't that what we are? We don't talk. There's too much drama in that. There's too much drama in that.
That's opening up way too many cans of worms.
But people are complex like that. It's not like this is just like reality of life.
Right.
I'm into reality. Like, this is how it is,
Mm-hmm.
Does nobody want to live in like how it actually happens? I guess everybody wants to live in the fake world, I guess. I don't
La La Land. Yes. We all like being in La La Land.
They're like, I don't want to be a part of, I don't want to be a part of my life. I want to be part of like my supposed life. Like,
right.
I don't know. Something weird about that to me. I don't know, but we're probably headed towards that regardless,
I think we're here.
the like VR, augmented reality. I fully believe we're headed towards that. I'm just not so sure about it. Like if it's the right thing,
Well, I think from what I innately and intuitively can tell about you from this point, I picture, you're running that track. You're real, you're about that. That's real.
Yeah, I want to be real. I want to be whatever thing I'm on, whatever interview I do, whatever podcast I do, I want people to go, that's the same guy. That person's very consistent in their behavior. And for a long time, over a long period of time, you can fake things on a short-term basis. But 10 years down the line, if you're still espousing the same values and stuff and people, man, I want to be a part of that person's existence,
And that's, like you said, the word, that's sustainable.
That's sustainable. And it's just, I know it. Hopefully that's a good takeaway from this, but like, Kara, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. I'm so glad we finally connected.
Me too. I wish the best for your husband. Please.
Thank you.
You guys keep on fighting the good fight. And I look forward to future conversations.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
You got it.